really, and you like log in, we'll see like to AWS, you're just going to log into a computer and you'll be directly in the command line. And you'll be able to interact with the computer, right? That's just like another computer connected to the internet somewhere. And you can interact with it like a normal computer, so long as you use Linux, okay? So long as you use like the command line. So, you know, some of the techniques of like using the Finder and things like that, that won't really be available to you. And like in general, it's just good to be kind of like more fluent with the command line. So, we have a few things that we just want to show with this. So imagine you have this Yelp lunch nyc.csv file. One thing also, like if you work with a really large data set, it can be hard to even load up that data set to then ask questions about it. All right. So one thing that's nice about working with a command line is you can avoid loading this data into memory, right? If we do like pd.readcsv, then you're loading the data into memory first, and if that data set's really large, that can be a challenge or even impossible to do. All right, so here we can work with the data without worrying about that we have to load this whole thing into memory. So what can we do? So if we want to explore this data set, we can use the word count command. We have this Yelp lunch.csv, and you can see the information that we get here. So this is the lines, the amount of lines in the file. This is the amount of words in the file, and then this is the amount of bytes. And this WC command, you can even, this is if we want to just see, for instance, like the amount of lines, you can do -L, right? And now it's just showing us the amount of lines. And then I think it's either -C or -N. I think it's -C. Hold on. -L-C, and maybe it's, I think that's the bytes. Let me see if I can do -N. I forget. Let me see. So these are the two I remember. Basically, the lines is the one that I look for, or if you just want to see all of it, WC-L, Yelp lunch, nyc.csv. If you want to see all of it, right, you just leave out the flag. All right, so now you can see the amount of words and then the amount of lines. One other thing you may want to do is just like look at the first few lines in the file. So if you just do head followed by the file, this is really useful because then you can, for instance, you're loading the data into pandas or something like that. You can just decide, hey, I really just need these columns, right, instead of all of the data. Right, so it's another good way to manage your data, and then you can view, just like the first few rows. I think if we do, I just want to see if I can get any of these flags right. -N3. Let's try that again. You see that? If I put a -N3, then I can specify the number of lines. So by default, I guess it's like 10. But we can specify more or fewer. And then another thing we can do, if we can see the first few lines, sometimes the bottom of the file is different, right? Maybe it's like corrupted, maybe it has different data. So you can check that as well with the tail command. And that's just, again, tail Yelp lunch nyc. So tail and then the name of the file. One common way that people will use tail is with a log file, right? Like if you have Postgres, and you're inserting data into the database or you're performing queries, well, the log keeps a written record, right, of all of the queries, right, of all the commands that's being issued. It's just literally written to a text file, okay? So one thing that you may want to do is if you just do like tail and then the log file, you can see the last 10 lines, but it's kind of done. One thing that oftentimes we do is tail-F, which means follow. And notice that it's still right here. It's kind of like listening, right? It's listening for updates to the file, and it will continue to display them, like the new last 10 lines. So this one will disappear, and then we'll see another one down here, right? So if you think about like running the server, when you run your Flask server and you see different, you see the logs there, that's what's happening, right? The logs are written to a file. And then you can just like see the results, right, by doing tail-F. This is pretty common. Like this is the one, I use this every once in a while. All right. Like I said, if you, like it could be useful, for instance, with like the Postgres log file if we were to find that. Okay, so far what have we seen? We've seen the word count, right? Where you just do WC, Yelp Lunch, NYC. We've seen head, right? To see the first number of lines. We saw that with head, you can pass through an argument, right? Like the number of words. The number of lines you want to show. And then obviously we saw with the other side, we can do tail. One other thing, this can get useful as well. We have VS Code now, so we can always, like in VS Code, right, we can search for a file, I guess, through VS Code, by just doing Command-Shift-F, and then, search for whatever, whatever it is. There's no results, but let's say like pizza, right? And it shows us throughout this file and really throughout the folder where these results are. But you can also do that through the terminal with grep. Okay, this can be really useful. Like if you have like a massive code base, lots of times people would, at least when I was coding, use grep in order to search through the code base. You can like search this file, let's say Yelp Lunch NYC. I think this comes first. Or pizza. Let's see if that works. Yeah, there we go. So this is everything that has pizza. Let's just choose one place like this. Huguenot. So it's just grep, the name of the word that we're searching for, and then the file that we're searching, right? And then one thing that's nice, I think it will go here. You can put in the -n, and here it tells you the line number where the match is. Okay? So you do grep -n for number, like line number, and then the word you're searching for, the file you're searching, and it tells you, and it gives you the line number as well as the match. Okay, I think that's mainly what I wanted to talk about with like kind of exploring a single file, right? We have the word count, we have head and tail, and then we have grep. Questions about these commands? One other thing maybe I can show you is if you do like man grep, you see that? So you can just type man and then one of the commands, right, that you want to learn more about, and it will take you to the Linux manual. All right, and you can see like now I can read about this. Okay, how grep works, different. Lots of times, what is it useful? Why is this useful? Is like the flags, right? Like look, we can print the number of lines of leading and trailing context surrounding each match. So the default is 2, but we can choose others, right? So like this can be useful when you do this, when you do like man, right, man and then the command, right? You can do this with anything. ls, here's a list of directory contents. You're taken into Vim, right? You see the little colon there. So for you to exit out of it, you just press the lowercase letter q, and now I'm out. All right, so I'll do it one more time. Man ls, I'm into Vim, and then I just press q, and then I'm out. All right. Other things to talk about is just piping. So piping, I think we probably have come across this, right? So you can, you can like kind of attach, like feed one command into another. So I'll show you what I mean. Say we grep for like, Chinese restaurants or something like that. Or let's say, things like York Avenue in Yelp Lunch. Okay. So now let's say we want all of the matches here, or let's say like there's too many here. So we just want to view the first like 5. So we can take the results of this command, right, which is, all these matches, and then we can just pipe them into like the head. And let's put quotes around this. This way it really is URCAF. Oh, that didn't work at all. Let's try Broadway. There we go. All right. So now we have, a bunch of restaurants on Broadway. Let's say we just want to see the first few of them. I can do like head of that. And now we just get the first 10. All right. So we're taking the results of this and passing that as the argument to this. That makes sense? You can do this with anything. So if we do ls, and I just want to say I want to pipe the results of this. Here I see 4 of them, and let's just see the first -2, right? So take the results of this and put them as an argument to this command. And now we only see 2. We're only listing the first 2 files. Right? So all you're doing to accomplish this is putting a pipe in between the 2 commands. And you can chain as many as you want. We can take I didn't show sort yet, but let's say we want to take these results. And so we have these results, and I want to sort them. Right, so now these are sorted. All right, and now I just want to get to view the first few of these things. So I can search for the word Broadway, get the restaurants, sort the results, and then just see the first 10. All right, and you can see this. All right, so this pipe can be pretty useful. So piping still, takes the results and spits them to what's called standard output. Standard output is what you see on the screen. Let me show you something. So really, when you issue a command, all right, you issue a command. The command by default goes to what's called standard output. Right? And that standard output is displayed, But another thing you can do is you can issue a command, and then instead of it going here, you can redirect it, okay, to another file. And so instead of the results being displayed on the screen, we can have the results be written to a file. All right, so I'll show you kind of what I mean. I believe we've already, when you log into, when you sign up for GitHub, you already see this. So, for instance, with GitHub, you use the echo command, initial commit or something like that, right? It says, okay, let's create a README. So you do initial commit, and then and what echo does, echo just literally displays, right? But now let's say I use this caret, and let's say we're going to write the results of this to a file called readme.txt. Right? And now notice that I no longer see the output, right? This is because, when we use the caret, we're saying don't display to standard output, but rather redirect to the file. So instead, if you look at the readme.txt file, let's just do code dot. Right? This has that text, right? So again, what we did was we just said echo, and then instead of pipe it, right, feed it to another command, we're saying rather redirect away from standard output and into readme.txt. If you do this again, if I do initial commit, let's just call this other commit. All right, and now let's look at the file. See that it replaced the contents of the file. All right, this is called clobbering, right? Clobber. So it's removing and replacing the contents of the file when I'm doing this. But if I want to instead append it, right? I'll use 2 arrows. And now we are appending, right? And not clobbering. the contents of the file. So when is something like this, useful beyond like the GitHub sign up thing? Let's say we want to, search for grep for like Broadway, right? We want to get it. We have a list of all of our restaurants, and now we just want to get the ones on Broadway. So we do Yelp lunch NYC, right? And then pipe to sort it, right? So now we have them in order. And now the next thing we want to do is write these results, this output to like Broadway restaurants.csv. Okay? And now this should be written. Instead of, I can like open this and view it. Another thing that you'll also see people do is just cat it. Cat it just means like concatenate. And it's just, it's just a shorthand for displaying this in the console, like display, right? We're just displaying it, the contents, right? We could have also used like head, of course, just if we want to see like the first 10. Okay, so right in the second half, what we learned about was essentially piping commands, right? Where we can like view the first, do something like ls, and then do ls pipe, just view the first 3, and that takes the results of this and feeds it to this next command, right? And we said that we can really chain this as much as we want. So we can do ls and then sort the contents of ls and then just show the first few results, right? And now you can see that, I guess they always were in alphabetical, but here you can see we did that again. And then we said instead of piping was spitting out to standard output, we can redirect the output to a file. So I can do ls sort and then pipe to like my files.txt or something, right? And then we can view the files.txt. And if you do this, it will, again, right, it will clobber the results. So we just see the same results again. But if we add the 2 carets, right, this will append. So now we see the results twice, right? Because it appended the second time. Right, and then we also saw man, right? Man cat. Here's the concatenate and print files, right? So we can look up kind of any of our commands this way. And then just remember you have to do Q. You can press space to read more, or just press the arrow keys. So your mouse doesn't really work when you're in Vim. In fact, when I was learning Vim, they unplugged my mouse, so I wasn't able to use it anymore. But anyway, so you just have to use the arrow keys. And then to get out, you press the letter Q. Any questions about what we went over, this material? Right, it's just, getting an understanding of like what are the resources that we'll be working with, right? And you can kind of see like a couple of different things. Like with AWS, like everything is split up into like different resources. All right. So if you think of a computer, right, then you basically have your hard drive, you have your computing power, right? So which is like your server, right? So your server has like the memory, some hard drive on it, a CPU. Right, and as we mentioned before when we talked about Snowflake, like that's basically the way to think about a computer. When we say a server, that's what we mean. We mean a computer, okay? A server is like a computer that has a website or can send back some information, right? So there could be like a database server because that also can send back some information. You can see that a hard drive is like thought of as a separate resource, the same way you can plug in, like you can buy an external hard drive from Best Buy, right, and plug it into your computer. The SSH key, this is how you can access, this is like the entry point into your server, okay, into your computer. Then you have like a firewall, which protects like who is allowed in, right? Like you can see it's kind of like guarding this thing, right? Who is allowed into my server. And then I think I don't really understand my diagram with the IP address, but this is the location. of the computer. All right. So it's an address, just like a street number and the street. This is, and you want to send something by mail to reach it. This is the same idea. All right. We want to like go to that location. All right. So that's the IP address of the computer. All right. So these are basically the different concepts, right, that just like exist in computing across, right? And then in Amazon, you can see that they just call these different things. So the IP address is still called the IP address. The firewall is called the security group, and it has, you can associate different rules with the firewall or security group. In other words, saying like, all right, is this available to the public? Is this available maybe just to another AWS machine, right? Like what port is available? Is nothing available, right? Like, so that's the security group. The server or the computer, that's the EC2 instance. It's a weird name, but that's just what it's called. So this is when people say like EC2 instance, it's just a computer. All right. And then the hard drive is called Elastic Block Store. So much of like AWS is just getting the naming and like understanding what they are, you know. So EC2 instance, just computer. That's the way I think of it. Security group, that's a firewall. All right. Elastic Block Store, that's a hard drive, right? And same thing, you can shut down the EC2 instance and still have that material saved to a hard drive. Same way you can unplug your external hard drive and turn off your computer, and then it's still on that hard drive. And then the key pair, right, that's the SSH key. That would allow you to like log in to the computer. Yes. Yeah, so EC2, right, stands for Elastic Cloud Compute, right, because you can buy, it's elastic, meaning that you can like add more resources over time. Same thing with like the hard drive, you can add more over time. All right, so this is just something to like really review is like, okay, what are each of these things? Right, I just remember EC2 instance, Elastic Block Store. For whatever reason, it escapes me. But Elastic Block Store is the hard drive. All right, and then security group is just a firewall. Okay. All right, let's try to sign up for this thing. So, you can see that you have these different resources. Like, S3 we'll talk about IAM, we already used. It stands for, I think, like identity and access management, right? So this is your users. Like you wouldn't think of users as its own like resource, but in Amazon it is like everything is like a resource. RDS is database. We'll work with that eventually as well. And for right now, we're going to work with EC2, so setting up a computer. All right. So over here, you can see there are like no instances running. Let's see if I click on instances. Let's click on launch an instance. Yeah, and this, okay. So this is kind of interesting, right? Like when you're doing this, like launch an instance, you can think of it as like you're going to Best Buy and figuring out like what you want to purchase. All right. So we want to purchase something that has like Linux on it or that has like Mac on it, right? Same thing as going to Best Buy. Like, do you want to buy like a Mac or a Windows? So what's the software that's installed, right? That's the Amazon machine image. Like that's the software that's installed on the machine. The instance type, right? This is the resources, meaning you can see that this has like one CPU, 1 gigabyte of memory, right? And I'm doing the micro because it's free. But that doesn't mean you won't. I would just always check your pricing or just shut it down. It doesn't. I'm pretty sure you can still get charged. The key pair, we'll see this eventually. Let's create a new key pair. All right. So we'll do a .pem file, key pair name. Let's call this sample EC2. Okay. And then the security group. Okay, let's talk about this. So far what we did was we selected that we're going to have Linux on our machine. All right, we'll give this name of like our sample EC2. For the key pair, this is for logging into the machine. So essentially what's going to happen is we're going to, we'll have a computer on the cloud, and then this will be our server or the EC2. Okay, so we'll have the EC2. And then we'll also have our laptop. Right? And so what we'll need is we want to, have essentially a password that allows us to log in to the EC2. And the way that this works is, you can think of it as a key pair. So one side is going to have the lock. I don't know how to draw that, but imagine a lock to a door. It can just do this, I guess, right? Like a padlock. And the other side is going to have the key. I'm just going to write the word key. Okay? This is public. Anyone can access the lock, right? If you walk around a gym locker, right? Like anyone can like access the padlock, like just like touch it or whatever. But the key part is like if holding the key, right? That's private. That's in your pocket. Only, you or authorized people have the key. So this is the pair. When you create that .pem file, this is the pair that you're creating, right? You're creating both the lock that's going to be stored on the cloud, and you're also creating the key, which is what you're going to hold on to on your computer. Got it? All right. So you can see like I downloaded my key pair, and it's just a file. Okay, it's just like a text file. I guess I can't add it. Yeah. But it's just a text file with literally like text inside of it. All right. The network, this is where, did this? There you go. So we can see here's the firewall. A security group, or the security group, is a set of rules that control the traffic to my instance. So right now it says allow SSH traffic from anywhere, which is the most, it's pretty open. And I'm going to be okay with that for now, right? We can change this to only allow it from my personal computer. But basically what I'm saying is if someone has, any computer, as long as they have the PEM file, I'll let them access it. Why am I being that open with it? Like I have my laptop, I move it around from location to location. If I go to a coffee shop, my IP address is going to change when I connect to the internet. So I'd rather not have to like only be able to access this when today when I'm connected to my home network. But for instance, like at work, maybe if your computer's always at work or whatever, you could restrict it so that it's only when you're like in that work setting, and just have it make sure that it's only from computers connected to that network. Anyway, okay, storage, right? This is that the elastic storage, right? So this is how much space, and that's basically it. And the number of instances. I guess the setup is changed a little bit, but you can see these resources are the same. So, okay, we name kind of the resource, we name our computer, we say what software we want installed on it. Like, am I buying like a Mac or Windows? Here it's Linux. This is the hardware, right? 1 CPU, 1 gigabyte of memory. So this is, I guess we could do even smaller if we wanted to. But this is the largest that's free. The key pair, we talked about that, right? That is, we have this padlock on the computer, and then we're downloading the key. And then I think that's about it. And then here we're saying, what do we want to allow access to? Like which computers are allowed to access this new EC2? All right. So you can see this rules with source of 000/0 allow all IP addresses, meaning like any computer anywhere. As long as you all have this PEM file, you all could access this EC2. We recommend setting a security group from known IP addresses only, but again, there's nothing on my computer, I'm okay with it. And then I'll click Launch Instance. Okay, so let's look at instances. This is what I just created. All right, this sample EC2. We can see that it's pending right now. So I'm just going to wait till it says something like started. You can also see this like availability zone. This is like literally where in the US or on the planet is this created, right? So you can specify, right, where you want your computer to be located. All right. Why do you do that? Well, lots of reasons, but one kind of obvious one is, well, if I have people, like, it's faster for me to access this from Virginia than it is from Hong Kong, right? To connect to, I don't have to go around the world to connect to my machine. All right. Now let's click on this instance. All right. And the main thing I'm looking for, so here's the key pair. I'm looking for the IP address. Normally, I will see something here that says, oh, you see this? It says the instance state is still pending. So I have to wait for this to boot up, before I actually connect to it. But in the meantime, you can see it already has this EC2, this public address, which is where my computer lives and where I could access it once this thing boots up. Let me talk about the VPC. Give me one sec. Oh, what operating system did I pick? I picked Linux. I wonder if we can see that specified somewhere too. While we're waiting, this is also good. Okay, so here you can see this. Here's the details. So Amazon Linux, right? I guess here's the sample EC2. This is that key pair, right? The security, this is interesting, right? We have, under security, you can see there's inbound rules and outbound rules. The inbound rules, there's kind of, let me share my screen again. So I have this cloud computer. The inbound rules is specifying what laptops are able to go in to this computer, right, and access it. The outbound rules is, imagine this computer is reaching out to the world and say making, it could be connecting to a database, more like it could be connecting to an API, like making a request.get, right? At that point, if it goes to an API, well, then it's hitting another computer. So maybe I want to lock it down from doing that. That's an outbound rule, right? Inbound rule, who's able to log into my computer, or it could be who's able to make a GET request or connect to the website, right? That could be, these are inbound rules. The outbound rule is, what is this computer allowed to ask about? What is it allowed to connect to? All right, so normally, this generally, we allow anything. This is pretty typical to make public, the outbound rules, because we have control. We're in command, we're putting the code eventually on this computer to determine what is it going to reach out to. The inbound rules, it depends what you're doing. Maybe I want to, for now we're making it all public, but you can imagine that. Let me show you one thing. Notice this port range thing, okay? So different services on your computer are going to be running on different ports. Port is just a location, right? So if we go back to my computer, let's say I have this, let me clear this. That's clear. All right, so I'm going to have my computer. Right, this is the, can I draw? It's not letting me draw. Give me one sec. Okay, there we go. All right, so I have this computer on the cloud. It has an IP address, right? That's like, the set of numbers assigned to it. But each of the programs on the computer get their own port. So we saw this before, right? Like when we ran Flask, it's available on like port, I think it's like 5,000, right? When we run Jupyter, it's 8888. When we run Postgres, right, it's 5432. So what you can do is you can specify not only like maybe I want anyone to be able to access Flask, right? So I'd set that to 0.0.0. But I only want nobody to be able to access directly into my database. So here I won't make this public at all, or maybe I only want certain IP addresses to access this. So when you set these inbound rules, you can make them specific to the port, and essentially because of its, the port is associated with the program. So you can say, hey, this program is running, my database is on 5432. Don't allow any access to it, but port 5000 allow public access to it. In this case, you can see that we had port, I just have to write it, port 22 has public access. Port 22 is used for SSH, all right? So soon we'll see what SSH is, but essentially if you want to access the command line of this computer, that's going to be anyone, as long as they have the PEM file, can do that. And you can see that we said port 22, anyone can access, right? All of the zeros. All right. And again, we can add more. How do we do this? I guess because let's see if it's booted up yet. There we go. Oh, all this red isn't very encouraging, but you can see this connect button. Wow, really didn't like this. So eventually we can, change these, add more rules and things like add more inbound rules or something like that. Let me show you that real fast. I think all we have to do is click on the security group thing, and then at this point we can edit them. Anyway, I'll go into that again. All right, so now what happened? We are booting this thing up. We see that the instance state is running, right? We're given this IP address. The easiest way I know to actually connect to this thing is by clicking on the connect button. At this point, we can then say how we want to connect. I'm going to connect using the SSH client, and it tells me exactly what to do. Open an SSH client. That is my terminal. Okay. Step 2. Locate your private key file. That is the sample PEM, this thing. That's my private key. The key used to launch this instance is sample EC2 PEM. See how easy that is? So let's do this show in Finder. Here it is. I'm going to just navigate to this thing by dragging and dropping it. And then I'll just, you know what, I'm going to copy it over. Let me get out of here. So just drag and drop this thing. So I'll copy this over to here. All right, so here's my sample ec2.pem file. So this is going to be the key, right, that I use to unlock my computer in the cloud. Okay, run this command if necessary to ensure your key is not publicly viewable. So what is this doing? This is saying, hey, let's make sure someone does not hack into your laptop, take your PEM file, take this lock off of you. Like, let's make sure they don't go into your pants pockets, pickpocket you, and take the key, right? So let's make sure they don't go into your laptop and take this thing. So the way we can do this is by saying, hey, we're not going to make this available to someone. Even if they have access to my computer, they won't have access to this PEM file. So we run this, chmod 400 sample ec2.pem. And now we can connect to my instance using its public domain name. All right. And then we can do that basically just by copying and pasting this. Let's do this. So I'll just click on this button, command copied, and then go here and press SSH-I. The authenticity of this computer can't be established. Do I want to connect? Yes. Oh, shoot. That was not fun. It could be. I'm surprised. So I have this EC2. Let's make sure. Here's my sample ec2.pem. The only other thing I would worry about is just the rules saying it's public. Oh, I have to press yes, I'm guessing. I don't think I typed yes. There we go. Now I'm in. All right. So all I did wrong was I pressed return instead of typing yes. So now it's saying, okay, we know this guy because I just said we're okay with it. And now we're in my EC2 computer. All right. At this point, right, it's really nice that I know how to use Linux. And like pwd, see where I am. So I'm in this /home/EC2 user. You know, we can create files here, or we can just, you know, probably even better is to copy over a file onto this computer, which we'll do in a second. All right. So far, what do we do, right? We created a new computer, and I just typed exit to get out. All right. So we created a new EC2 instance. We said we're going to use like Linux. We check the security groups and specify that, hey, anyone, as long as they have the PEM file, can SSH into the computer. And then we simply went to this connect button, and it told us what to do. Right? Locate my private key, run this command to make sure it's not publicly accessible, and then run this. One thing I wanted to talk about, right, is this is the domain name, right, which is the domain name, as we know, is like, you know, ESPN.com. And then there's an IP address that is like kind of an like uninterpretable like string of digits, right? And the example I always give is just like we no longer remember our friends' phone numbers, and so we just click on our friend's name. That's the idea with a domain name. The issue here is that like Amazon doesn't, you know, creates tons of different, you know, computers for people. So it's not going to give you like a sensible domain name. It just gives you this string and imagines that this makes sense. All right. And then we just copy this and then now go back to the computer. All right, questions about, I did go over it through a ton, so let me know. And, you know, obviously there are readings to walk through all this, but let me know any questions so far. Yeah, Tim?
Yeah, how did you generate the PEM file again?
Yeah, so when I signed up, when I clicked on launch instances, right, so it's kind of giving me this default. Here's the key pair, all right? And I can create a new key pair here, all right? Or I can basically, if I want to, I could stick the same lock, right, just on on this new computer and say just use this existing PEM file, right, if I want to. But I generally create a new one. One thing I want to emphasize is that like the thing I have to fiddle with most is the security groups of an instance. So if I go to, here's my instance is running, right? I'm going to click on the instance. And then let's click on the security, inbound rules, outbound rules. Okay, it looks like I can't edit this, right? But I can if I click on this, this is like the security group resource. Like everything is its own like dedicated like object almost, right? So I'm going to click on this link, and now I believe I can edit my inbound rules or I can edit my outbound rules, right? So if I want to, I can add a rule saying like, hey, I want to allow, you can see that it's associating different like kinds of access. Like if I want HTTPS access because I'm running a website like Flask, right? I can say, hey, allow people to access this from anywhere. All right. And now save the rule. And let's also do one for HTTP. Add a rule to allow, because, maybe we just have straight HTTP access. I'd like to change. Okay, this is cool. On port 80. So if someone wants to make a request to my website, and my website is running on port 80, right? I'll let any computer do that. And we'll save the rule. So now I'm not only allowing my computer to be SSH'd into, but also I'm allowing someone to have like HTTP access to it. So anyway, this is a nice thing to know, right? If you go to the EC2 machine, so I go to my instances running, I click on the instance, and then here under security tab, I click on security groups. And then you can see that now I have these 3 rules. So I'm allowing, right, I need one for each kind of access. And this is what I've messed with the most, is the security groups. Right, and then you click on, so I clicked on it, right, I clicked right here, and then I'm clicking on edit inbound rules, edit inbound rules. If I want to mess with the outbound rules, I'll click on outbound rules, edit the outbound rules. All right. Okay. The next thing we can do perhaps is create, like you can imagine, generally what I would do is like create a Flask app on my computer. So if I have app here, and then let's have like a requirements.txt file, and then we can build, a Flask app that eventually we want to put on my computer. So I have a requirements.txt file that has the Flask library, right? And then I'll have from Flask import app. Is that right? I'm forgetting how to do this. From Flask import app. Let's go to Flask quick start. Yeah, here it is. From Flask import Flask. All right, so from the Flask library, import this, and then return hello world. That's fine. And then remember we want to do app.run, I think, right? And let's say we want it on port 80. So let's just run this file. No module named Flask. So let's do pip3 pip3-r install pip3-r. It's just that. I don't know where my brain's going. Pip3 install -r requirements.txt. There we go. Okay, so what am I doing? I'm first going to create a little Flask app on my home computer, and then I want to deploy it. So I'm going to put this on AWS. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm installing from the requirements.txt, which has, Flask in it. And now I should be able to do Python 3 index.py. Right, and this is serving permission denied. Why deny me? Debug mode. Maybe I have to say, it might be because of this port thing it doesn't like. Yeah, so it didn't like the port thing. What I want to do is, I would like to do port 80, and I'm going to say host equals 0.0.0.0. Let's see if that works. Just curious. I have to do this as a string. All right, that seems to be working. So let's just confirm. So now I'm going to my local host, port 80. It says hello world. What I'm doing here is I'm changing the port that this is running on. Remember, by default it was port 5000, but when I put this on AWS, I'm going to want it to be port 80 because you can see that's the port we're allowing incoming traffic to access. So we're going to go to my AWS machine on port 80, and then that's going to access my Flask application on port 80. What this host is doing is, remember that my EC2 machine prevented people from the outside world from accessing it. But we said anyone can access it if we say, okay, 0.0.0.0 means any computer can access it. Once we get in there, there's my Flask application is going to be running. And that itself has its own level of protection. It also is concerned, Flask, the library, is also concerned about who's able to access the website. So what we're doing now is we're saying, hey, any computer in the future will be able to access this website. All right, that's the IP address. Let's yeah, I'm probably going to need to follow the reading, but let's just see from here. So now I want to copy the contents, essentially, of this directory onto my machine in Flask. All right, so I can do that. Yes, copy app into the Flask machine. Or sorry, the AWS machine. So that's going to be this IP address, I think. And I'm probably going to have to cheat. It's going to be, I forget if it's /home/EC2 user. Let me look. Yeah, SCP and SCP and SSH. So we already saw, right, within SSH how I can log in. Okay? Now we'll see how I can copy things over to SCP to copy a folder over to my machine. In this case, it's still not telling me what this thing is. Sorry about that. What I just need to figure out is, let's click on connect. All right, so this is what I'm interested in. It's home/EC2 user, right? This is the folder that I'm gonna wanna put my app code onto. All right, so I want to put it into this address. It's :/home/ec2 user. Let's see if we can do it. So let's exit out of here. And we'll do /home/ec2 user. Right? And we should be able to do SCP. The server is this thing. And I need a colon here, don't I? And I want to copy app. And probably recursive. And it broke. Oh, permission denied. Oh, that's not so bad. So I guess I need to put in the name of the key. -I. The PEM file. Sample EC2 PEM. Is this right? Man. Yeah, I may have to figure this out offline. But let me try to explain what I'm trying to do. Right? I have my code base here. Right? I have my code base in under app. So what I'm trying to do is copy my code base onto the machine. Right? Onto my AWS machine into this directory. And then if I can do that, then I can just simply, then the files will be there, and then I can do like python3 index.py and boot up my Flask server on my AWS machine, and that will effectively deploy it. All right, so that's the goal. I don't know why I'm getting the permission denied. It could be because I need to have this like EC2 user thing first. So you see how here I have this EC2 user at? I wonder if I need that as well. Oh, that worked. So what I did was I secure copied from app, from the folder on my local computer, over to here, over to my AWS machine, colon, in this directory, home/ec2 user, and I said as, like, as this user, I guess, right? Now, if I connect, if I SSH into my AWS machine, you can see that I have app here, right? And now cd into app, and I'll have to like reinstall pip3 install -r requirements.txt. So I have to reinstall Flask now on my EC2 machine, and then I can do python3 index.py, and I broke it. And ideally this thing would run. But I guess I have it in the instructions. I don't know why I'm getting a permission denied. Yeah, well, I got pretty far. Does anyone have any idea? No?
Did you save the local host, the host name change?
Yeah, right. This is saying anyone can access port 80. Right? Yeah. I'm not quite sure. But for whatever reason, I guess something is permission. Let's just Google Flask permission denied port 8080 AWS. Okay, look at that. Look how beautiful. All right, so I've developed a Flask app. It's running successfully, so have I. Am I missing something obvious? This is a privileged port. Okay. Meaning you need special permissions. Which require root access. So I guess, does that mean like I should use like sudo? Oh, no module named Flask. That's different. Oh, so let's do this. Sudo pip3 install -r requirements.txt. So now I'm just prepending sudo, and now I'll do the same thing with this, and that works. So basically, I guess the AWS computer is preventing me from accessing port 80 unless I kind of override it by saying super user, like I'm a super user, I have access to do this. And then what I should be able to do now is go, and so now this is running. What I should be able to do now is go to that domain name in AWS, which is here, I think. Right? This is the domain name. Let's just make sure. So this is the public domain name. If we go to open address, oh man, :80. Oh, this is HTTP. Is that why? There we go. This is my website. It's on the internet. So what I did from here was it took me to HTTPS. When I clicked on this, clicked on open address, it's taking me to HTTPS, which I don't have. This is not available on HTTPS right now. So I switched it to HTTP, and that was enough. Then now we can access it. I also specified the port, right? But I don't need to, because by default, Chrome assumes, Google, your web browser will assume that when you're accessing a website, you're always accessing on port 80. That's the default, all right? So you can just go to that computer. It's going to go to port 80, where your Flask server, is running, and it makes a request. And you can see, here's my GET request, right? Here, this was my GET request that it's viewing. All right, so what did we do? Essentially what we did was we had to figure out how to, we booted up Flask, we changed the host to be 0.0.0.0, we changed the port to be port 80, then we made sure it ran locally, then we copied using, I guess we needed my PEM key, the contents of app, right, my Flask code base, onto my EC2 machine. Once that was on there, then what we did was we connected to the machine, right? And we said we're going to first install requirements.txt. The first time we forgot to prepend sudo, but then we did it, right? And then we'll need to do sudo python 3 index.py or whatever it was. Oh, app. Let's connect the app. cd app. And now I'll do sudo python 3 index.py. And now this boots up my web server, and then I can go to my domain name and make a request to it. All right, and just like if I had /users or /sports teams or whatever, it would then send back that content if we actually had those routes defined. All right, so this is how we can deploy a website, or at least the beginning of it. All right, the readings will move through this as well. Hopefully this gave some overview. We can obviously do this again. Questions about any of this stuff that we covered, right? We covered SSHing, which means like connecting to the shell. We covered secure copying, which means copying the data over, copying our code base over to our machine. Yes, Sina?
Is there anything special we have to do to disconnect from the EC2?
I'm just doing Control C, right? One thing bad about the Control C is that now I basically shut down my server. One thing I think you can do is prepend. If I put an ampersand at the end of this, oh man, I thought it would run this in the background. That's what my goal was. Like this way I can like exit out of my shell without it. But it seems like I'm having issues. Anyway, you can just press Control C and then you can just type exit, and now you can see I'm out. All right, I'm back in my command line.
Thanks.
See that? Yeah, using an ampersand at the end. I don't know why it. Yeah. Oh well, we'll figure it out later. Yeah. Other questions?
I guess one thing to add about the EC2 is just because you disconnect, it'll still be running. So you got to be careful about
Thank you.
then turning it off in the console.
True that. Okay, so you can do this instance state and then click stop instance. That's a very good idea when you're like done and just like, okay, we did it. Take an exhale, stop your instance, click the stop button, and now this thing will eventually stop. All right, so it's stopping. Yeah, good idea. Other points to note or other questions? Right. One other thing just to emphasize that we did was, we modified our security group. Right. We were given kind of by default access on port 22, but we also made sure there was access on port 80. If you guys run into problems, this is my guess as to the problem, like the thing that you're most likely to forget is to remember to change the inbound rule, right? To go to security groups and then click on edit inbound rules and then add HTTP access and allow that from anyone. Okay. Cool. All right, I'll let you get to it. So let me show you what I'm deploying. There's a good number of readings like building up to this. I wasn't sure I was going to go through all of it, but we did. So really all of, okay, we did this, EC2 overview, AWS PEM, IP addresses and ports, talks more about what we talked about with IP addresses, SCP and SSH, deploying it to EC2, and then finally, I doubt we'll get here in 30 minutes, probably not. Let's not send this out yet. Just move through these readings, do your best.